welcome everyone to the panel discussion today. So today's topic is why a long-term strategy is a leader's best short-term strategy. Thanks, Julie and Paul, for sharing your experiences today. Oh, you're not Paul? Paul, get on up here.
I bring a little bit of Paul's wisdom, but not Paul.
Yeah, definitely not Paul.
1, 2, 3.
Are you on? So joining our panel is also Imogen Hewitt, CEO of Spark Foundry, and on the MFA board as one of the key directors there. I'm Natasha Young. I am the business director at Bohemia, and I'm on the MFA 5+ Sydney committee. So welcome, guys. Thank you so much for coming in today. So the questions that we are posing, they've been compiled by the MFA 5+ Sydney community. They've been kind of grouped into 3 kind of core themes for today: long-term mindset, leadership, and your story, our story. So we all hope to have some time today for a couple of questions at the end. If you do have a question, we will be handing out Paul's book, The Dreaming Path. So make sure you have a think of the questions, and we'll be handing to the floor at a later stage today. Based on the fact that these MFA events are all about learning, have a think about what's some of the key points you guys have taken out today and how you can apply these to your own leadership roles and action them from these wonderful speakers today. So, my first question today: a long-term idea can be a challenging proposition to take to marketing boards, particularly regarding the development of long-term brand equity. What do you think the most valuable ammunition is for having that conversation in a way that can resonate with a board?
It's a really good question. I think the first thing I always like to talk to people, I always reinforce that marketing as a discipline is the growth engine of a business. So if you're looking for growth, you really need to harness the capabilities of marketing. You need to change your mindset around cost versus investment. And you need to sort of preempt what they're saying, answer the questions that they're asking you before they're asked, or frame your responses knowing the way that they think about marketing, and you'll get a good sense. You know, I've experienced very supportive executives that get marketing. There's others that don't really, so you've got to take them on the journey a little bit. But I think a very simple message is, if you want growth, you know, well, you've got to look at marketing, and it's an investment. And to my point when I spoke to you all, really understanding the language of the business and being able to tie what you're doing back to business results is really important. And if you don't have exact business results, then use case studies. You know, demonstrate. There's so many examples of how you can achieve success, and that would be how I would approach it with a board and key executives if I needed to get them across the line with long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned consideration is your favourite brand metric. That's absolutely my favourite brand metric as well. But obviously, Imogen, that's a really difficult discussion to have with our clients. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I tend to agree. Oh, that was loud. Oh, hello. I really agree. I think that the best defence in that particular situation is to have done your homework. And I think there's lots of things that we can tap into to find the case studies or the proxies that we need. We can go and have a look at Lesbian, go and have a look at the IPA data bank. But I also think that when we are talking about the benefits of being long-term in terms of building equity, or even in terms of building ultimately better productivity, profitability, there are short-term metrics that you can gather that will help to give you an indication of whether or not your long-term strategy is working. And my experience, for all the right reasons with clients, is that they'll ask you often whether or not it's working. And that can be quite unnerving if you haven't already thought about what are the measures and metrics that I can share with you today that give me a sense that where I'm heading to tomorrow, or where we're heading to collectively tomorrow, is actually working. Because I think people are nervous, because we do tend to be evaluated on things that are faster turnaround than the things that might necessarily have the bigger outcome if you can stay consistent over the long term.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was thinking earlier today, what's the collective noun for all you people here? You know, like, you've got pods of dolphins, you've got a murder of crows, and you've just given it me, you're a metric.
Ooh.
a metric of movers and shakers, because that seems to be the term. What I would say is there's no doubt with boards and all those kinds of people, they're bean counters. So metrics are really important. They'll listen to all the fluff and nod their head, but they won't care. So you can so first of all, you need to put up the benefits of long-term. This is the long-term outcome, and you need to pitch it so that it's an investment, but they won't care about that either. So then you'll have to convert the intangible into the tangible, into a metric, into an evidence base, into dollars, the bottom line. But I'm really clever because I've done those studies and I've been a CEO that used to do naughty things. I can bullshit with the best of them, so I can turn numbers into magic. And so you don't lie, but you really, distort and contort, and you get them to support your argument in a way that you can talk to that has an evidence base to get them on board. So it is about crunching the numbers and saying, if you do this, in the longer term, we'll get all of these benefits in terms of productivity, including productivity and savings.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Julie said earlier something about empathy, which I think is actually quite relevant in this situation as well, because if you really understand what other people are being measured on, you have much more likelihood to be able to recruit them to the story and the narrative and the destination that you need them to go to. So if you can get that bit right, to balance of the kind of the human and the metric, then you're probably setting yourself up for some success there.
Yeah, and building relationships with finance. I think we can all relate to that in the room here.
It's advice for the ages, right?
Absolutely. So next question. The Indigenous long-term belief of caring for my place and all things in my place for my children's children's children's. Can you provide an example of how this may work in a media agency world or in business? How could we apply that kind of thinking for longer-term benefits?
I don't know the media world, only you can answer that.
I can give that one a crack too when you're ready.
No, you go.
I think I was thinking about this because there was so much really interesting content in what you both were saying, but it isn't kind of a direct parallel. So I think the best articulation of that kind of wisdom and knowledge into the context of the businesses that we're leading is about thinking about the culture that you're trying to build. And so I was thinking about, we are building something deliberately which has a vision, has values, has a construct whereby we make decisions through the lens of those values rather than the decisions just on the fly or because they're urgent. And I think that kind of gel that you build is probably where we can get to a longer term and more akin articulation of the kind of Indigenous wisdom that was being shared. And it's difficult to do because it takes a long time. Yeah. And so therefore, by definition, you have to create some consistency and a way of being. But for the leadership team and I at Spark, we often talk about building something that can be handed down through the organisation and over time, so that there is this sense that we are deliberately trying to make ourselves redundant, and that is a goal as opposed to a fear. And I think if we do that right, then we've created something which has much more longevity and is about trying to build something good and for the right reasons that lasts beyond us. So it's not nearly as impactful as having a view on your children's children's children, but it is kind of a parallel, I suppose, in the way that we're trying to lead the agency.
I guess it's important to employ kind of that self-leadership and make sure it tiers all the way down, even to the juniors, so that you can create a workplace that's inspiring for them and they know who they are, so that they can leave it better than how they found it.
I've got a slogan that I've just remembered. I think Linda and I might have come up with it, and yourself, Julie, when we had our yarn the other day. It's simple. It's a 3-word motivator, and that is do good things.
Yeah.
If you do good things, the world will be a better place and you can go home feeling pretty good about yourself.
That's great. I think, from a Volvo perspective, I was transitioning between my previous role to my current role, and I remember at the time I was really uncertain about what the future held, and I wrote down in a little notebook, I just want to work for a company that I'm proud to promote their products. And I know it sounds cheesy, and it is a bit cheesy, but that's what was important to me, because I want to be able to go home feeling good about the work that I do each day. And when I learnt that, many, many years ago, in 1959, Volvo developed the 3-point safety belt, and I'm sure a lot of you know, but they made a conscious decision at that time to share the patent, or not patent it, and share it with the world, because they wanted to save as many lives as possible, and it would be the wrong thing to hold on to that knowledge and not share it with the broader world. So I love that ethos, and I see it come through in the interactions I have throughout the business, is how do we make decisions that will impact people's lives in a more positive way. And so apparently, according to the statistics, over 1 million lives have been saved as a result of the 3-point seatbelt to date. So, I think that's something really proud and something that Volvo holds dear to their heart, and they continue to look for those opportunities.
Yeah.
Julie, can I just make a comment for everyone on the term cheesy? I get really, really tired of when someone, usually I'm on radio and someone will say, oh, that's a bit cheesy. Just because it's cheesy doesn't mean it's not good. I mean, who doesn't love a cheese melt? So, cliches are quite powerful and profound at times, so don't diss something because it's cheesy or a cliche. Quite often that's where the wisdom is. So when I hear people say cheesy, I zoom in and I go, there might be something really good there.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Paul. So, Julie, you mentioned that the long-term mindset is simpler than what you think. Why is it that people are so reactive, which then causes stress and makes work less inspiring?
I don't think they're patient, which was one of my points. We want instant gratification in our lives all the time. And I know myself on a personal front, the transition from having a unit to moving to a house, it felt like it was taking way, way longer than I wanted to. And I was getting really, really impatient, 2 screaming kids, trying to work from home during COVID, thinking, am I ever going to achieve it? But you need to have the patience, you need to let things unfold and allow them to unfold. So I think that's probably a check for us, is to, be okay that things aren't instant. Be okay that you're not seeing the change instant, and own it as well, and be confident when you're speaking with your stakeholders that, as I said, don't expect this to change overnight. One campaign is not going to see things fly off the shelves immediately. It takes time and discipline.
Yeah, I love what you said around patience, because obviously as leaders in the room, we have a lot of team members under us that are kind of waiting for that longer form promotion or something like that. Imogen, do you have any thoughts on that, on any builds around patience and how we can best as leaders communicate that with our teams, as to kind of look at the longer term approach rather than just those short term wins?
Well, I think if people are nurtured towards a longer term goal and you're able to check in with them consistently and frequently around their progress, that can create a space for some more patience.
Yeah.
If you can paint the picture of what the end goal looks like and why it's great, to build the skills in order to get there at the right time, to be able to then pass those skills on and do the best possible job that you can for the people around you, then that can help create a little bit of that. But I think that we are short term because it's built into our DNA, because it's a stress response, because we're kind of biologically built to run away from wild animals. And whilst there aren't many wild animals, arguably, in media agencies, it's still a natural response. So I think it's also about the discipline of understanding that you need to take a few deep breaths.
Yeah.
But that is not helped by the fact that we are so frequently evaluated based on, daily reporting templates and weekly optimisations and quarterly business reviews. And the cycles are really short, which doesn't work in the favour of developing a long-term mindset. And back to my earlier point, it's why I think sometimes we need to do the work up front to think about what are the measures and the metrics now that indicate that our longer term plan is going to work, so we can kind of take some of the stress and the pressure out of those conversations that we're still going to have on a daily, weekly, quarterly kind of basis, but they feel like they're building to something bigger.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I think about as well is this need to compare all the time, or compete, right? We're in an office environment and we've got colleagues that we're alongside, and someone gets a promotion. Oh my God, I've got to then, knock on my manager's door and say, I need a promotion because so-and-so got a promotion, and we're always comparing. And I think there's a famous quote somewhere that says to compare is to take away joy, from your life. So, run your own race. Don't worry about all the distractions that are going on around you and how quickly someone might be progressing versus another person. Run your race without comparing to others.
I love that.
I just need to say this one, then I'll shut up. No, I won't. But this is really important. You all have a big problem. And you're all going, yeah, I know that. You all have a big problem, and that is your boss. All of you have this one boss. You don't even know this is your boss, but your boss is the clock. What's the first thing you look at when you wake up of a morning? The clock. What are you doing all day? You're fighting. You're fighting the clock. Red lights drive me mad. Oh, because time's ticking. You're here, you've got to go back-to-back meetings, client, timelines, KPI. Aboriginal people, we connected with country, and that was our boss. So unless you learn how to flow with time rather than fight it, you're always going to be stressed.
Do you have any examples of how we could flow better with time?
Well, for a starter, I don't wear a watch. I only wore it today because I knew I was on stage. I don't wear a watch. When I was a CEO, I never ever had back-to-backs. I quarantined my time. I worked from 9 of a Monday morning till 6 of a Friday night. Weekends were mine, and that was it. No one could come near me unless it was really life or death, and then I'd answer the phone. Otherwise, people knew, don't bother going to Paul, it's family time. We're all different, but you've got to really think about it. This is all about, you can manage this if you think about it, but if you don't, you're going to be busy. It's a pandemic of busyness, all of you, and you're going to busy yourself to the grave and go, gee, I wish I, and you'll have a life full of regret. So it's important what you do, and yes, we need to be productive in our time, but I can tell you now with my consultancy, I manage my time. I still paddleboard every second day. I walk 90 minutes on the beach with my dog, and I make time work with me. I don't let it boss me around.
Yeah, absolutely. I think getting a dog is a strong tip.
Oh, he's a good dog.
Buy a
Beautiful dog.
Make
I've
sure
got
you get that
videos.
90-minute walk in. All right, I might squeeze in one more question. I don't know where Linda is. Am I good? Okay, thanks, Linda. This one's around leadership. Is there a leader that you believe has a long-term mindset, and how has this been beneficial, and why?
So I would say someone that I have admired, that I saw speak, so I haven't worked with this person, but I was so enthused by the way in which he spoke and the passion that he had, and it was at a AANA event a couple of years ago, and it was Greg Creed, the former CEO of Yum Brands, global CEO, started out as a marketing executive, and I was just so inspired by him and his story of starting out in marketing, because we don't hear that many stories as marketers going through the chain and then eventually getting to run the show as the CEO. Not only run the show locally, but to run it globally as well for a very inspiring group of people that work for him. So I really liked Greg Creed because I thought he was very candid and very honest and quite a funny guy, and was willing. He said something along the lines of, I think it's a Picasso quote, but he said, your responsibility as a leader is to actually hand over your gift. Share what you know, share your knowledge with others. And I really got that sense that he was at that point of retirement, and he was really wanting everyone to learn from his experiences and what he did. So if you get a chance, he has got a book that I purchased. It's called Red. And he's really, he was really, really good. So I loved him.
Yeah.
And that's the person that comes to mind.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Paul, I know you had a bit of a
I haven't met a leader that I admire in the Western world, no.
Yeah.
I haven't. Too short-term, too reactive, they get agitated, they're just shockers. In the Aboriginal community, I've met lots of leaders because they'll sit down and one of the things they've shared with me is they'll say, all these non-Aboriginal people, when they sit around a table, they listen so they can talk. When Aboriginal people sit in a circle, we listen so we can learn. And so just think about that in terms of leadership. So no, I haven't, and I might be a harsh judge too, but I just see the Western system so flawed in terms of narrow-mindedness that it's not the people's fault, but the system doesn't allow people to be good leaders.
Yeah, I watched a talk that you had a few months ago with Cuppa, and I remember you saying,
right.
Talk to old people. They've got so much wisdom.
Yeah.
Just turn around and talk to some old people. And I thought that was some great advice.
I'm doing a gig with Cuppa tomorrow at Wynyard, big advert, yeah.
Cookie's
Just over
great,
there.
isn't he?
There, somewhere.
Imogen, did you have any words on that?
I think in terms of our own business, and it is probably a little bit of a groan moment to kind of quote your own boss, but nonetheless, I think that Artur Sedan, who is the global CEO of the Publicis Group, has some credentials in long-term leadership in that he set out a vision which was very difficult, copped a lot of criticism, a lot of cynicism, but stayed very true to the course. And I think it was about bringing agencies together so that they can harness the best of everyone's skills. It's called Connected Platforms, it's called Connected Culture. But the point is that it was widely maligned as though it wouldn't work. And there was an enormous amount of pressure to kind of abandon the vision. And it's taken, in business terms, a long time to start to come to fruition. And so I think it's probably about 5 years in. And it's only just really starting to kind of get the kind of traction it needs. But I think that there was a real level of commitment and patience I guess, forward thinking associated with that kind of set of decisions. Yeah. But I also think, just in a much more meaningful, for me personally, way, that there's a quote from Martin Luther King which is about the arc, I think it's the arc of history bends towards good. And it just basically says, good things do take a long time. But if you are consistent and committed, and you have belief in the why behind the vision or the direction, it will come to fruition eventually.
Yeah, and I love what Julie said earlier as well about having lots of short-term goals to get to that long-term goal as well. All right, guys, well, we might throw to the floor and just get a couple of questions. Just a reminder, each question you'll get a copy of Paul's book, The Dreaming Path. So we've got a mic. This lady over here.
This is stressful. Hi, I'm JJ. I'm from Wavemaker. I just wanted to ask Paul, how do you balance having confidence in yourself and your own knowledge with coming with that really open, ready-to-learn mindset? Like, essentially, when do you dig your heels in and say, I think I'm right, compared to when do you sit back and maybe have a more receptive approach?
I didn't hear that last bit. You have to put the mic up closer.
Oh, sorry.
Come on, you have to do it all again.
Basically, essentially, how do you balance having confidence in yourself and your own ideas in having a really open mindset ready to work with others? How do you know when to stick your feet in the mud and say, I think that we should do this versus listening to everyone else?
I don't really think about it, but I'll take a step back. In terms of confidence, when I had my breakdown, I didn't have the confidence to leave the house and I wanted to kill myself, so I had none. But when I look back, I had none of it all my life. And so this was about me saying, okay, I need to be courageous, I need to be brave, and I need to be me. So the most important thing any one of you can do is do what old Derek Zoolander does. Again, the most amazing sage ever. And that is, who am I? Because I can tell you now, from the minute you go to school, you're brainwashed about what success is. You need to sit back from that and say, who am I? What are my footsteps? I have a journey. Our old people say, we are conceived in love, we are born in love, we live in love, we go back to love. If you really think about that, you don't have to prove yourself to anybody. You're already perfect. So then it's about going, who am I? What is it I'm here to do? And then you've got to really trust in it and be courageous. And then you do use your analytics and go, okay, I need to be diplomatic in all this. And so let's say, and we were talking about it at my table, let's say you might have a client where ethically you disagree with that. You need to find a touch point where you can find common ground and maybe lead them in a better direction without being forceful. An example yesterday, I had a phone call from a mining company saying, you don't want to talk to mining companies. I said, not really. You do bad things, but if you're willing to go beyond, let's employ more Aboriginal people to dig up the earth, and let's talk about how we might set aside 100,000 acres for cultural appropriation with a peppercorn lease. I'm happy to talk to you about these productive things that are innovative and passionate. So it's about creating relationships and dialogue where you can feel safe with each other. But I can draw a line in the sand and say no. If I think an organisation is just using me to tick a box, I'll say diplomatically, I don't think I'm your person. And I'm prepared to let the business go. I'm prepared for my business to do nothing. I've brought my son in to run my business because we're so popular at the moment. And we're both known for being authentic. And we won't take on clients unless they're genuine about doing good things. So you have to believe in all of that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
All right, we've got time maybe for one more question. Maybe up the back here.
Hi guys, hi everyone. My name's Ryan, I'm from Zenith. I guess my question is kind of born out of a place of nervousness or pessimism maybe in some ways. So I'll start off by saying that I love working in media. It's something that I've really enjoyed over the last 9 years. But I guess something that I think a lot about is that we only exist as an industry, or one of the main reasons we exist as an industry is that we work for clients, and that's the main reason that we exist. And as I've kind of progressed throughout my career, things have started to become more apparent where a lot of the decisions that are made on our behalf, or the clients that we work with and that kind of thing, are based off of short-term metrics. So the thing that I think about here is price. You know, we'll often hear stories about when you go into negotiation after a pitch, and the first thing that will come back is, yeah, but how much can we shave off of that? How much can we bring that rate down? So I guess my question is, how as an industry, can we have a long-term vision for what we want to succeed with as an industry when a lot of our success is determined by short-term decisions that are made on our behalf by the parties that we work with? And I know that some clients are, there are others that value impact and all this kind of stuff over cost, but it is a theme. And I think a lot of people are feeling that nervousness now. So again, pessimism, but I do like media.
Ryan, did you have someone you wanted to direct that to?
Oh, I'll go Imogen.
Yeah.
If you'd like
Thanks.
to share.
So I think it's a big question. There's tons of stuff that we could unpack in that. Ultimately, if we always succumb to a price war, we don't create an environment wherein we can pay the people that will deliver the work, or create an environment in which they will be able to thrive. And that is a conversation that comes down to how much empathy can you build for one another, and how much understanding of the business on both sides can you build. And sometimes that requires a very difficult conversation that you need to be prepared to walk away from. On the flip side, I'm not a fool. It's hard to walk away from those conversations if you are not already thriving as a business, so it's quite circular. And the more pressure you're under, the more likely you are to make decisions that are not in the best interests of the people in order to try and gain the growth to be better for the people. I don't think that you can't short circuit it. It has to be tough decisions that are always in the best interests of the people, and there are very difficult conversations that come along with that. I don't think it's universal, and I do think you can say we offer a highly valuable service that deserves to be paid for appropriately. And there are more people open to that conversation than you might imagine, but the conversation needs to be had. And to have it, you have to have a pride in what it is that we deliver, and a longer term focus on the best people will only work for us to deliver the best work that is possible if we are all paid appropriately. So, there's no easy way to have that conversation. It's one of those ones where I heard someone say once that you should have the conversation that you don't want to have first, because otherwise it just gets bigger and badder and scarier. So that would be my own personal perspective on that.
No, thank you. That's good.
Just a quick anecdote that comes to mind when I'm thinking about this, and Mel's in the room still, I think. I used to have a very, very, very tough dealer, and we were doing dealer cooperatives a long time ago. And he had some marketing experience. He thought he knew media really well. Yeah, and he probably did know media really well. He used to call me and go, "Julie, your cost for the age spot, I can get it for a fraction. And I'm telling all the dealers I can get it for a fraction. I can get the rate for this, that, and the other." And this went on and on, back and forth. Every time I went to him with a proposal to spend money, he's like trying to, squeeze it and trying to created an enormous amount of work, right? And eventually I sat down with him and I said, "Andrew, you got to make money in your business, and so do our media agency, right? So if you want to go on a distress cycle all the time, we can do that, you know, no problems. But, you know, you might not get the best and there's no certainty. But, you know, you got to make money when you're selling your cars to customers. And I'm sure, you know, sometimes you have tough negotiations, no doubt, but you got to make money and you got to pay your staff. And the same is true for our business partners. So you get what you pay for a lot of the time. So yeah, it was an interesting one. And I won him over eventually. He just got sick of talking, I think, because he kept talking and talking and talking. It was driving me crazy.
Julie, you sound like the dream client. I'd love to just roll you out to all our
It took me a
clients.
while.
Yeah.
It wasn't instant, you know. I took a while to warm up, and I thought, I've got my moment. And I had to, back to empathy, I had to put it into a context that he understood. As soon as I said, you got to make money in your business, you're selling cars, you hate it when your customers are screwing you down, it kind of clicked.
Yeah. All right, well, one final question before we finish up today. If there is one thing that each of the leader in this room could walk away with, what would that be from each of you? One key thing.
I'll start, because it's easy. Think about your story, and then think about your responsibilities to your story, and if you have the courage to follow that, you'll have a life of contentment. And that'll achieve good things.
Yeah,
Pretty simple, but not easy.
definitely. Imogen?
I think that I like to think about leadership as you're trying to create the climate, not the weather, which might sound like a weird thing to say, but the climate is about consistency and the fact that people look to you for reassurance and vision and the means to get to something better and to be continuously striving for something better. The weather is the stuff that just happens every day. And sometimes we experience the urgent, the weather doesn't actually have the kind of impact that it feels like it's going to have on that given day. So if you are, for me, it's about thinking about the climate that you're creating as opposed to how you're responding to the weather conditions, because they may well be tumultuous, but the climate can be consistent. Or not, if we're talking about global warming. But hopefully the metaphor stands.
Julie?
Oh, goodness. I don't know. The thing that comes to mind for me right now is the things that are causing you trouble, or the things that keep coming back to you. Face them, you know, and try your best to sort of work a way through it. There is a way. You know, it might take time. You know, you might have to build a few bridges. I don't know, but the problems are where you should sometimes spend a bit of time to get that out, that noise that comes through constantly, deal with it, you know, silence it so that you can then concentrate on other things.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, guys. It's been such a great panel discussion. Big round of applause for our speakers, please. Thank you so much.